Escatawpa Jane Doe, identified as Clara Birdlong. I paused a little while with this case before presenting it because I was hoping there would be a photograph of her. But that wasn't to happen. Unlike so many of the Doe cases, we know who took her life. She was a victim of a serial named Samuel Little, who confessed to taking the lives of nearly 100 women. We know he was in Jackson County, Mississippi in 1977. A composite depiction of what she may have looked like was developed by Jackson County Sheriff's Department. She had a distinctive gold tooth in the front, and they had believed this would aid in her identification, but that didn't happen. She was found by a group of hunters in 1977, and it was believed that she had been there for 3 to 4 months. They knew little other than she had the gold tooth and that she wore a wig. Eventually, she would become known as the Escatawpa Jane Doe because she was found near the Escatawpa River on the Marsh Coastal Preserve. In 2012, an investigator for the police department about 200 miles southeast of Jackson uploaded the victim's information into the national database used for cases involving unidentified people. Anyone missing a family member is asked to go to the namus.org site. Follow the directions on how to submit your DNA. GEDmatch would eventually solve this case, but it's so important that people add their DNA to that database. NamUs is the database they go to first. GEDmatch is an important place to upload DNA if you're someone like me who's not actually missing anybody. You could still help identify a missing person. When it comes to missing people, however, this year investigators again began working on this case. They would find it was necessary to build a family tree in order to find out who Clara was. They used DNA publicly available on GEDmatch. Clara's cousin was living in Texas. It was this cousin who would eventually lead to Clara's cousin's grandmother, who is 93 and originally from Mississippi. She actually knew Clara. One report suggested this grandmother was actually Clara's grandmother, but this is impossible. If Clara had lived, she would be 88, meaning the grandmother was 5 when Clara was born. This did, at least thankfully, lead to the right genetic line and the identity of the woman who went missing so long ago. A friend of Clara's would go on to say that she remembered Clara leaving. She was with an African-American male, and he was passing through Mississippi on his way to Florida. Clara chose to leave with him. The cousin's grandmother recounted what she knew. She said that Clara went missing from LaFleur County in the 1970s. Originally, it seemed like the man she left with was probably not Little, because he usually targeted much younger women. However, when Clara went missing, she was 44. This changed, however, when Little included her in his confession, and he proved to be in the area at the same time, so it's likely he was telling the truth. Little went on to be convicted in 2014, and he was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of 3 Los Angeles women during the 1980s. He later confessed to 93 more women, many of them across the Southeast. He focused on at-risk women who are Black and often estranged from their family or struggling with poverty or addiction. Clara Birdlong went unidentified for 44 years. The Juab County John Doe, identified as Rene Alberto Romero. Rene was last seen at his residence in Reno, Nevada on October 28, 1994. But it would not be until 1995 that he was reported missing. This is a truly horrific case, and the 2 younger siblings in Rene's family had been severely harmed so badly in a way that I can't even dance around with on YouTube, as far as what I am and am not allowed to say. It was just really bad. Fortunately for the remaining boys, DFS became involved. The younger boy told his caseworker that he had a brother who had tried to protect him when his parents would beat him. He also described an incident where he was beaten badly, and he said he hadn't seen his brother since. The 2 younger children were just 2 and 3 when this happened, so it's pretty incredible that they even remembered, not to mention that they were even able to give voice to what they had seen. It turns out that the parents immediately moved with the remaining 2 children to Burbank, California when Rene went missing. Despite being so young, the boy bravely told the police that he last saw his brother in the kitchen of the house that they moved from. He said that he saw his mom give his big brother 2 drinks, and then his brother fell to the floor. this was the last time that he saw him. He said that his mother wrapped Rene up in a blanket and told the other kids that they were taking him to the doctor. The police did investigate this, but they found no record. Unlike so many of the cases that we've covered, not having a body in this case didn't save the parents from facing charges. Ana Romero and the child's stepfather, Alberto Ortiz, were prosecuted and sentenced for the boy's murder in 1998. The sad thing of this, however, is that the police had been to their house multiple times for complaints of child abuse, but it doesn't appear that being reported to CPS did anything. The children weren't even monitored by the agency. No charges were ever filed prior to Rene going missing. The system that was supposed to protect them clearly did not. Heinous things happened, especially to one of the remaining brothers, that goes beyond imagination. It would turn out that Rene Romero's bones were discovered in 1996, just a year after he went missing. They were found about 84 miles south of Salt Lake City. His case was treated like a homicide, and as I've mentioned in other episodes, his DNA was uploaded into NamUs, which is the National Unidentified Persons Data System. This is where anyone missing a loved one should upload their DNA for identification. I have no idea why, but for some reason they often do not search GEDmatch. In this case, Ana Romero's DNA was entered into CODIS, which is also used to search through the NamUs system. As a result, Ana Romero's DNA matched that of her son. The DNA match was not made until the DNA was extracted and uploaded in 2014. Most of the ones I'm reporting on this channel right now are from 2015, which appears to be when the database was utilized the most. Both parents were arrested and convicted. There isn't any information on what happened to Ana Romero after her release on parole by 2015. The stepfather, Alberto Ortiz, was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and I was able to confirm that he is still in prison. I have no idea why this woman was released. Because U2 vows to remain family friendly, I cannot even say what she did to her kids, but it's horrific. It is so bad. As far as I'm concerned, she got off easy. There's no reports on what happened to the remaining boys, but hopefully they went on to live good lives. Rene's remains were delivered to one of the brothers. His body was found over 500 miles away from where he went missing. His parents, however, traveled 450 miles in a different direction from where they took his life in an attempt to disguise their crime. The odds were against his identification without DNA, but the state of Nevada never stopped trying to find him. Rene went unidentified for 18 years. He was just 4 when his life was stolen. Had he been allowed to live his life, he would be 31 today. The Wendover John Doe, identified as David Arthur Stack. David Arthur Stack grew up in Milford, Colorado, and the 18-year-old high school graduate decided in June of 1976 that he was going to head out and see the world. He planned to hitchhike to California, as so many people did in the 1970s. His family would later say they looked forward to seeing him again and hearing about his travels. But there was nothing but silence. His family wouldn't know for 40 years, but David only made it as far as Wendover, Utah, just a few weeks later. He had been listed as missing since August of 1976, and his family desperately needed to know what happened. His 7 siblings wouldn't get that answer until DNA solved it in 2015. Somehow his remains had been transported to the Utah Water Treatment Facility, and they were found shortly after his life was taken. DNA would go on to confirm that John Doe was in fact David Arthur Stack of Milford, Colorado. He only made it about 300 miles on his journey. We always hoped that it was something better than it ended up being, his youngest sister said. His brother would explain they worked with the police in Colorado trying to find him over the years. We never stopped searching. They often wondered whether he chose to walk away and live his life without them, or maybe travel to Europe or developed amnesia, among any possibilities. I always thought that he went to Alaska, one brother said. They went on to explain that their brother Dave was adventurous. He was charming and charismatic. He was 6 foot tall with shoulder-length hair. He especially liked hanging out with his friends and going to rock concerts. His family describes him as the most popular of the siblings. People enjoyed being around him. Of all the Stacks, he was the big star, James Stack said. His cause of death was 2 gunshot wounds to the head. So far, there has been no movement on who took his life. But a few years ago, police said they had a break on the case. Nothing has been released. David Arthur Stack went unidentified for 40 years. That's it for today. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. If you could take a moment, please hit like and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and each other.